Continue, as we were talking about, there are, different things that can happen in our body if we create that desynchronization. So in this other also very interesting published paper, here we are seeing how we have, the inhibition through the bright light and then the stimulation through the darkness, and why this is so important. So you can see here how light pollution is a big deal. Light pollution will suppress your melatonin. You need complete darkness in order for your body to have enough melatonin at night. But sometimes we ourselves block our own melatonin through that cell phone, through those computers, to that television, to that tablet, that bright light that you are exposing yourself is actually blocking your melatonin. So what can we do? Well, ideally you shouldn't be using these things after sunset. But if you have to use them, most of the new operating systems have the capacity of entering what is called the night mode. So you turn on that night mode on your device, and as soon as the sun sets, these things calculate, when the sun is gonna set, then it's gonna block all the blue light, because it happens to be that the blue light is the type of light that blocks the most your melatonin. So this disruption of the cycle impairs our ability to perform. Because as you can see, there are certain times of the day where you are better at certain things. When you're faster, when your brain works the best, when your bowel moves the most, and so forth. But if we're disturbing that, then things get desynchronized and you don't get optimum functions of the following things. So light late at night delays those circadian rhythms, and that's the reason why you cannot fall asleep, because the levels of melatonin are not high enough. And that's why you try and you're not falling asleep. That's a classic symptom of a circadian rhythm that has been disturbed. So in order to solve that problem, we don't solve it at night, we solve it in the day. Exactly what Katie was just mentioning, that early in the morning exposure of light starts creating that synchronization, so that at the evening, when you are in darkness, your melatonin will be much higher. And the thing of it is that some people don't have the ability to go out in the sunlight and so forth. If that's the case with you, you need to invest yourself in one of these devices. There's just no other way around it, because you need that bright light exposure. And then we have this problem that is quite common today. I was just with some people earlier this morning, and I was talking to them, and both of them were falling asleep before my eyes, at 10 in the morning. That tells me something is not right. You shouldn't be falling asleep at 10 in the morning. And that tells me there is some sort of disruption of their body clocks that is taking place. So the desynchronization in their bodies, that clock that is supposed to determine, certain times when you feel sleepy, certain times when you feel energetic and so forth, that is what is happening with them. This is also a huge problem in schools today. If you go to the average high school and you see these kids, you're going to see many of them, are sleepy and falling asleep in the classroom and so forth. Why? Because they are disturbing their body clocks. And what they don't understand, sometimes young people feel that they are indestructible. I have bad news for them. They are not. By disturbing those circadian clocks, they are opening the door to multiple diseases later on. That's the reason why business like Starbucks, I'm sure you have this thing in Australia, isn't it? The lines are long. People have to wait there, 15 minutes to get their dose because their circadian rhythms are so disturbed, they want to go and grab that caffeine shot and so forth. But see, you're dealing with the symptom. Why don't we go and fix the cause of the problem? How is their exercise? At what time are they going to bed? Are they eating too late? Is their level of stress going off the roof and they're not managing their stress correctly? All these factors need to be dealt rather than just taking a shortcut. And also, this is one of the worst things you can do, because caffeine blocks down your melatonin. You don't want to do things that block your melatonin. So, how are we going to manipulate our clocks? So, light after sunset, as we mentioned, tends to delay the circadian rhythm. So, the sun set. Your body was starting to get ready for you to sleep later in the evening. That's why the melatonin was starting to be pumped out. But what do? Expose ourselves to very bright light. Well, the body thinks, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Even though sunset happened at 7 p.m., maybe it's really not sunset. Maybe I'm reading things incorrectly. So then starts delaying that circadian rhythm. And that's going to suppress the production of that melatonin in the pineal gland. That's going to cause a delay when you sleep. So you go to bed, and there you are, just staying there, and not sleeping and so forth, because the melatonin peak that is supposed to be there to help you fall in that deep sleep is not there. And then light early when you awake tends to advance that circadian rhythm. So that's why what Katie was mentioning. First thing in the morning, you go out and you need to expose yourself to bright light. In fact, it's interesting, in our depression program, we have the key of every single one of our patients. So, if the patient had a bad night's sleep, and he tells us, hey, don't bother me, I want to stay here in the morning, sleeping here in the morning. No, sir, we're not going to allow that, because if we do that, that disturbs circadian problem. The same story is going to repeat when the night comes up. They're going to try to sleep, but because they were sleeping in the day, now their sleep is not going to be good. That means their sleep quality is going to be poor, and you get in this cycle. Rather, we knock on the door. If they don't open the door, we're going to open the door, because we know that they need bright light. So if it's a summer type of day when there's nice sunlight, we're going to take them out. Either if they're very tired and so forth, well, just sit down outside and get yourself exposed to that bright light. Or if you do have a little bit of energy, well, let's go for a walk. So then you even optimize the effect. In that way, we start programming that rhythm so that the cycle of the serotonin starts. And then by the time that sunset comes, because we expose ourselves to that bright light, that's going to mean that the levels of serotonin are going to increase in that brain. So by the time that sunset comes, as we mentioned, the serotonin becomes the what? the melatonin in the evening, they're going to have a nice peak of melatonin. Therefore, their sleep is going to improve. That's what I do as I travel all over the world. I plan my trips mathematically. I'm very picky. I just don't get on any plane. It needs to be at the right time and so forth. I know when I'm going to do my exercise. I know when I'm going to get my bright light. I know when I'm going to sleep and so forth. In that way, I'm able to shift my circadian rhythms using bright light and the time that I eat and so forth. So, when you expose yourself to bright light early in the day, that causes you to feel tired earlier in the evening, because the cycle will start that way. We're going to shift that cycle. So think about it like that. It's a cycle that is set. Light in the evening, you shift the cycle. Light early, as you wake up, we bring that cycle back what it's supposed to be so that you can sleep early. So that's going to be the key. You know, if you're having sleep issues, it doesn't matter if you didn't sleep good. You want to go outside. And there's research that shows that even if it's overcast, if it's cloudy, you still go outside, there's still bright light there, and will stimulate the bottom part of your eye, improving that serotonin. So again, you know, check the amount of lux of different things. So sunlight, tremendous amount of lux, 107,000 lux, fantastic. Full daylight, 10,000. Overcast, that's by sunlight I mean that you're actually looking at the sun. Don't do that, you're going to damage your eye. You know, I don't recommend that at all. Full daylight, 10,000. Overcast day, 1,000. That's enough. That's enough to start stimulating your eye. Very dark day, 107. Twilight, 10. And then full moon, 0.1, and so forth. So the moon is enough to disturb your melatonin. There's studies about this. The days that are full moon, many people have a hard time sleeping well. Because as you saw previously, as I show you on that piece of research, still a full moon is 0.1 lux. That's still too much light. Even as your eye is closed, your eye still is functioning and detecting that sunlight. So I need to go all the way to the quarter moon and lower in order to have good night sleep. And here you can see the different areas of the house, usually what's their average light, and it's too much light, you know, it's too much light. So this is the study. You can find it there on my Twitter. Going outside, even if it's cloudy, helps the internal clocks improving sleep. And the thing is that lack of exposure to daylight causes that disruption of those clock genes and will disturb the start and the quality of your sleep at night. That's why you need to expose yourself to bright light. Now, in the old days, our ancestors, which most of them happened to be farmers, didn't have this problem. They were pretty smart, and they knew that if they went to work in their farm at midday, it was too hot. It was not going to be nice to be outside there with all the sunlight and things, you know, very, very, very hot. So they were pretty smart, so they would go out early in the morning to start working in their fields. So in that way, they didn't know physiology, but that's exactly what was happening to them. They were being exposed to that bright light early in the morning, and in that way, when they got home later in the evening, the last thing they wanted was to stay awake, isn't it? They were so tired from working those fields, and after being exposed to that light, problems like insomnia were unknown back then. You know, everybody was sleeping pretty good. That's definitely a modern problem. Also, when you're outside getting that sunlight, don't use sunglasses. If you use sunglasses, you are going to block that, brightness. So when you're exposing 30 to 45 minutes in the morning. After that, you want to wear your sunglasses, that's okay. So then here you can see as the artificial lights hit the eye, you end up affecting things inside of your body. And this is also a very interesting study. Those e-readers, the tablets and so forth, even in use of light-emitting e-readers, negatively affects sleep, circadian timing, and next morning alertness. And now you know why, isn't it? Because what you did in the evening by exposing yourself to those light-emitting devices, it was too many lux. Therefore, you block your melatonin, and that's why even the morning alertness, you didn't sleep correctly, so your brain is not ready. Your brain is in a state of disruption. So here you can see it, the huge difference between the people that were reading a good old book, and reading an electronic book. So when these people were trying to sleep, you can see that it was taking too many minutes to fall asleep. They went to bed, but they were not falling asleep because that bright light that they were being exposed was blocking their melatonin. So better either audiobook or good old book. That's what you need to be using at night. And also another big problem that I see with multiple patients is people leaving lights at night. That is not good. Now, I'm not saying to go ahead and trip yourself and fall in the night. That wouldn't be good at all. But what you need to do, you need to change your white light into which type of light? Red light. So they sell those, just go and find them in the places, where they sell this type of things like IKEA or stores like this. So instead of your light there in the bottom, being white, that's a no-no. You want to have a light that is red. Red light is not going to interfere with that melatonin. I've seen people that have gone through traumatic experiences and are afraid to sleep in complete darkness. And that light is not good for them. That light that they're sleeping with, it's actually aging them faster than what it should. So here's a little morning routine. So you want to expose yourself to that sunlight before 9 a.m. In 30 seconds to 30 minutes, depending. If it's like super bright, just a little bit of exposure, that will do it. As I mentioned, don't use sunglasses. And also, windows will block that beneficial part of the spectrum. So you cannot just say, oh, I'm just going to be there, in front of the window and get that sunlight. Is not going to work in an optimum fashion. You need to be outside. So it's going to take between 7 to 50 times more time to get that proper amount of sunlight if you are behind a glass. And if you're going to use a light box or the glasses, as Katie was showing you, those devices usually have about 10,000 lux. It's going to take 20 to 30 minutes. You want to have between 11 to 15 inches away from that light box. And what are we going to do in the evening to optimize those circadian rhythms? Well, we're going to start decreasing the amount of light as possible. If where you are there is overhead lights, it may not be a bad idea to put a hat. Remember what part of the eye is the one that detects that light? The bottom part. So by wearing a hat, you're actually blocking some of that light that was going to hit the bottom of your light. And if you have the possibility, dim your lights. Don't have them so bright in the evening. And as I mentioned, red is always better than white. And to start a show, cognitive tests your ability to have alertness, your ability to take the best decisions will improve if you're able to increase that melatonin in your body. Now, something interesting is that our ancestors, again, they didn't have this problem because they used to turn on the fireplace, isn't it? Now, what color is the fireplace? It's red. Fascinating, isn't it? So they didn't have this issue. There was no white light there, like the e-reader or the cell phone disturbing their circadian clocks. It was red light. And which angle was coming? Was that red light coming from up, down, or from down, up? From the bottom up. Fascinating, isn't it? How we get ourselves in trouble by thinking that we're smart and then start putting all these lights and things, And that's why when you go camping, you sleep pretty good, isn't it? Because of the darkness, because the fireplace is down there, so you're getting that red light from the bottom up and not stimulating the bottom part of your retina. So in order to decrease that light exposure, turn on that night mode that I'm telling you. Do not use computers if you are not able to use that night shift. If you have an older version of Windows, the older version of Windows doesn't have that night light feature, you can install that F-Lux program for free. So F-Lux is a little program that you tell him where in the world you are, and then the thing makes a calculation, what time you're supposed to have your sunlight, what time the sun is going to come, and will block that blue light for you. So in Android, also turn on that night light. Also, there are some blue light blocking sunglasses that you may be able to get, but still too much brightness will also disturb. So watch out for that. And use red light and make sure that red light is hitting you from the bottom up. Okay, so especially be careful with your bedroom light. There are some bedrooms that have this super bright light, boom, coming from above you. That's the wrong type of light to be exposing yourself at night. And here you can see this very interesting study. It was showing that most of the melatonin is produced in your mitochondria in your body. It has now been shown that the mitochondria produce melatonin in many cells in quantities which are orders of magnitude higher than that produced in the pineal gland. This subcellular melatonin does not necessarily fluctuate with our circadian rhythm or release into the circulation system, but instead has been proposed to be consumed locally in response to the free radical density within each cell, in particular to near-infrared exposure. So, this melatonin, as we were talking about, is a tremendous antioxidant. So it's produced just in the mitochondria. It's not going to go to the whole body. And this is going to be optimized if you expose yourself to sunlight. Not these lights, because you need that spectrum of the light, I'll show you in a minute, that can cross your skin barrier and reach all the way to that mitochondria. That's going to be the best way to optimize that light. So that is going to be one of the best protections against those reactive oxygen species that we're talking about. The fact that the mitochondria is functioning is generating those things. So that melatonin, that's why it has been proposed how it helps us against cancers, against neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and dementia, against cardiovascular disease, against diabetes, and may play a very important role, says the scientific paper, in the treatment and prevention of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Both of them are very much related to that oxidative stress, and even for COVID-19. So here is the 9% and 95%. Based on an optical and biological review of the literature, it is proposed that the near-infrared red portion of natural sunlight stimulates an excess of antioxidants in each of our healthy cells, and that the cumulative effect of this antioxidant reservoir is to enhance the body's ability to rapidly and locally deal with changing conditions throughout the day. In this approach, the role of circulatory melatonin produced by the pineal gland is to provide an efficient method of delivering supplemental melatonin during periods of low cellular activity and solar stimulus to damage or aging cells. In other words, it's still important to generate enough of that melatonin via your pineal gland, because the day that you were not able to go outside to the sunlight and so forth, you need to complement that on aging cells in both diurnal and nocturnal animals. While circulatory melatonin may be hormone of darkness, subcellular melatonin may be better the hormone of what? Of daylight. That's why you need sun exposure. You need to go out to the sun so that your skin can capture that sunlight and you can stimulate your melatonin. So here it is. This is the spectrum of light that this paper was talking about. This part of the spectrum of light is the one that can penetrate the epidermis, and that's how you feel it as heat. You know, when you're in the sunlight, you feel this heat that in your skin. That happens in this portion of the spectrum of light. So here you can see how the higher you are in the atmosphere, the more the radiation that happens. That's why in a plane there is more of this solar radiation than at the sea level. You can see there the wavelength changes. And here is, look at this. how that red part of the spectrum, that infrared spectrum, goes way, way inside your body. This is fascinating, isn't it? Why we need to be exposing ourselves to that sunlight outside. As societies, we are chronically unexposed to sunlight. No wonder why in our patient population, as we check vitamin D's, man, almost everybody has low levels of vitamin D, and that's not good. That's telling you that you are not getting enough of that sunlight that is outside. And here's also another very interesting study. In this study was showing that people that have darker skin, they need to spend more time outside, because that melanin that gives you that dark color blocks a lot of that sunlight. But in this study, it was showing how even those people are gonna benefit from that. So what they do, as the person has, more of that melanin, they become very efficient at the exposure of sunlight. That's why, people in Africa, where there's a lot of sunlight there in the equator, tend to be people with very dark skin. And in fact, as you travel in Africa, I've been to many countries in Africa, the closer the people are that live very near the equator, the more darker they are, because they need that extra protection with that tremendous sun exposure. So here is very interesting. You can see here that a spectrum of light. Notice that you can see all the way to those arteries in the hand, because that light is able to penetrate way, way deeper there inside your skin. And this is also very interesting, what proportion of our human cells are affected by that spectrum of your light. You can see that as you expose yourself to that light, almost all your cells, there's a little, small segment that are like way, way deep inside of you. Those are not going to get that exposure. But if you expose yourself to that sunlight, most of your cells in the out part of your body will be receiving that beneficial spectrum, which means that's going to translate into more of that melatonin inside your mitochondria, which means we're going to be able to neutralize those oxygen-free radicals much more efficiently, which means our cells are going to live longer and we're going to decrease cellular aging. Can you see the good deal about this? And look at this one. This is a fascinating study showing that near infrared spectrum light reaches all the way to your brain. Fascinating, isn't it? How tremendous the reach of that light. So this is something that our brains, we're starting just to learn about this, but we theorize that our brains also are going to need, some of this exposure to this light. And here you can see, as you have this special light, they're applying it here a little bit under the eye, and that is reaching, all the way inside the brain. So you don't need direct exposure to the sun to get that near infrared spectrum. So you don't necessarily need to be looking at the sun. Don't do that. You're going to damage your eyes. But as you're outside doing your exercise, green is actually a very efficient way to get that spectrum. So as you're walking in places that are nice and green, that sunlight is hitting those green places, is being reflected to you, and you're getting that benefit from spending that time outside in nature. Also, places where they have snow. Snow is also an excellent conductor of that near infrared spectrum light. So that's why God gave us the snow in the winter. You know, as this amount of sun is decreased, still it's able to reflect some of that light to us, as we need that light for our mitochondria even in the winter. And check this very interesting study. Title of it, The Health Benefits of the Great Outdoors, a systemic review and meta-analysis of green exposure and health outcomes. We found that spending time in or living close to natural green spaces is associated with diverse and significant health benefits, says the article. It reduces the risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, premature death, and preterm birth, and increases sleep duration. People living closer to nature also had reduced diastolic blood pressure, which is a marker of heart failure if you have too much of that, heart rate, and stress. In fact, one of the really interesting things we found is that exposure to green space significantly reduces people's levels of salivary cortisol, a physiological marker of stress. So just by the fact that you're hanging outside, your stress levels actually go down. And you guys live in a beautiful place. You know, there's places I've been in planet Earth, there's just desert and there's nothing, around. You guys have these nice, nature reserves all over Sydney. Go and take advantage of them, as you go out. There's research that shows that doing exercise where there's a lot of eucalyptus, the eucalyptus start to secrete these oils, and as you breathe that eucalyptus fragrances, you're actually stimulating your immune system, and that stimulation lasts for days. I mean, how many places would love to have eucalyptus? You guys are the origin of all the eucalyptus worldwide. This is where it came from. So, what we need to do, we need to start increasing our levels of sunlight. So this is such an important topic. We run out of time that I want to do an extra session later this week. So as you continue coming to the meeting, we'll continue, giving you an extra session of this such an important topic, which is sunlight and our health. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and I hope to see you later. There's still a few copies of my book there outside, so if you're interested, go ahead and pick one.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eddie. Did anybody learn something new tonight? I like to read, so I learned audiobooks. I'm doing audiobooks, and I also just learned that on my Mac and on my iPhone I can do the night shift thing. Yes. I did it right now, so that's definitely going to be a benefit to me. Good. So thank you very much for bringing that to my knowledge. All right, friends, I just want to say thank you again for coming. If you're enjoying this and you think, oh man, my friend really needs to hear this, I encourage you to bring somebody. We put these programs on at this church because we really just want to benefit our community. So thank you so much for coming and for joining us. May God bless you, and we hope to see you again tomorrow night. Have a good evening.